Just, I feel pretty good today. I got back late last night. We got through our last big tax planning meeting. And I know, I'll tell you, I think November and December are probably the toughest months. You're really trying to, tell your clients what to do before the end of the year. The planning, minimizing tax. I mean, that's what they want to hear. And November, December, I think, is critical for us as CPAs, really to communicate our value of what we can bring to our clients and how we can help them reach their goals and objectives. And these are the really hardest months. January, February, March, and April, we're working long hours. I mean, more compliance, doing hopefully what we already put in place. But November and December are really the critical months to position our clients from a tax standpoint. We still have time left, so if there's anything, it's December 20th, there's 10 days, so if there's anything you got to, get to before the end of the year with your clients, get to them. Again, this is where we bring the most value to our clients. One of the hot topics still, as I went through the planning with all our clients, was the 3.8% tax, the net investment income tax. And the IRS gave us a nice present right before Thanksgiving. I think it was the Wednesday, November 27th. They sent out the final regulations regarding the 3.8% tax. About 150 pages of regulations. And there were some things that really were unclear on the proposed regulations. So I just want to share it with you because I think it's important. They were unclear about self-rentals. So if you had somebody that, a doctor that practiced in a building that he owned and he was paying himself rent and there was net rental income, it was unclear whether that was going to be subject to the 3.8% tax. In the final regulations, they clearly state that self-rentals are not going to be subject to the 3.8% tax. So just something to keep in mind as you go forward. Imputed interest, if you have a shareholder loan, that interest will not be subject to the 3.8% tax. So I just kind of want to bring you up to date. If anybody wants the final regulations, I have them. Just give me your email and I can just shoot them right over to you. I have them on my desktop. I've been through them a few times already. So if you need them, I can shoot them over to you, right? What else, right? So as we always do now, I'd like to get the meeting started. Before we get to our keynote speakers, we're going to get some updates from our subcommittees. So I'm going to introduce Jonathan Bresman, who's going to bring us up to date, a 5 to 10-minute update on what's going on in the estate and trust area. Jonathan? And they requested that we stay at the podium when we're doing our speaking today. Who's ever going to be speaking, so they can get the video shot in. Okay.
And talk into the mic for the pay-per-view audience. Yep. Okay. Good morning. Nice to have a morning meeting. Just a few quick updates since the last meeting. The IRS and more guidance continues to come out on the Windsor case, recognizing same-sex marriages for all federal purposes as a legal marriage. Windsor struck down Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act, saying marriages are only between couples of the opposite sex. It did not strike down Section 2, which says states can make their own laws and decide that marriage is only between one man and one woman. So that is still in place, so we're going to have a patchwork of laws among the states. The IRS and every federal agency I'm aware of, except Social Security, is following the place of celebration rule. Right? If you are legally married in the place where you got married, had the ceremony, then you are legally married, even if you subsequently live in a state that does not recognize same-sex marriage. So if you're legally married in Canada or Maryland or Iowa or New Jersey or New York, then you move to Texas. You are still married for federal purposes, even though you wouldn't be married under Texas law. Question came up as to amending returns and whether you have to or could. Legally married same-sex couples must file their 2013 returns as either married filing separately or married filing joint. For 2012, if they are filing on or after September 16, 2013, a new filing, they must file their returns as married, either separately or joint. If they filed before that date, they had the option to file either as married or single. And for 2011 and all other years where the statute of limitations is open, they have the option to go back and file as married filing joint or married filing separately for 2011 and earlier years. A New Jersey civil union is not a marriage. It has to be married. They have to be married. Civil union, domestic partnership, any other marriage equivalents in other state laws do not count. It must be marriage. Those states that now have same-sex marriage, we have California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii as of December 2, Illinois effective June 1, 2014, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington, and District of Columbia.
New Mexico signed this morning.
Thank you. Did not know that. New Mexico actually had several counties in New Mexico were recognizing same-sex marriage and performing ceremonies, and some weren't, but it's nice to know that now they're all online. Next item was executors' reliance on CPA's advice on filing deadline. Did not constitute reliance on professional advice to excuse penalties for a late filing. The executors working with the CPA got a 6-month extension of time to file the estate tax return and a 12-month extension of the time to pay the return. The executor thought, and the CPA said he could get a 6-month extension, an additional 6-month extension for the time to file. Didn't get an additional extension. The CPA thought he had the 1 year to file, filed in between the 6 months and the 1 year, and the Ninth Circuit imposed penalties and did not excuse them for reliance on professional advice, and the Supreme Court refused to hear the case. So we have a Ninth Circuit decision. Third Circuit and other circuits could rule differently. But that case is out there on professional advice on filing deadline not being reliance on a professional to excuse missing a deadline. This was in last month. I wanted to just quickly hit it again. I think it was a major issue. There's the McCord decision that's been out there that says if you give a net gift, you give a gift to someone and the donee, person receiving the gift, says agrees to pay the gift tax, you can, it's a net gift, they pay the gift tax based on the net amount. Right? You net it down because they're taking on a liability, relieving the donor. There is partial consideration for the gift. The McCord case says that if you agree to pay the estate tax, or if the gift is pulled back into the estate, then you do not get a deduction for that. You can't net it out because it's speculative. You don't know when they're going to die within the 3 years to pull the gift tax back, right? Or if it's a grat, you don't know if they're going to die within the term to pull the gift back into the estate, and it's speculative whether or not the estate tax will be paid. The new decision by the tax court overruling itself and vacates that and says, yes, you can do an actuarial determination of the probability it'll be paid back in and what the estate tax liability would be, and you can value that, and therefore you can net the assumption of the potential estate tax by the donee against the gift. Right? It's obviously got to be enough money to make it worthwhile. In this case, the net value of the gift was $71.6 million. So it was worthwhile going through the calculations of the potential estate tax and the life tables and the odds that they would die within the 3 years and what the estate tax would be, and doing an evaluation of that. But if you have a large enough gift where you're paying gift tax and there's potential estate tax liability, the person's old enough where you have a good possibility that it'll come back in, just keep it in mind. Yes?
If the person actually died within that time period and it's within the statute of limitations to amend the return, can you actually do it based on the actual fact that you did pay the tax?
I would assume you could. Yeah, it's within the statute we can amend. You know, I think it would be a tough, actually thinking about it, it would be a tough argument to do that because you're valuing it at the time of the gift. And at the time of the gift, you're taking into account those probabilities. So what would someone pay fair market for it on the date of the gift would take into account also the possibility that they would survive the term. So maybe thinking my initial answer, I'm going to reverse my initial off-the-cuff answer to a second off-the-cuff answer is probably not. Because your valuation would take into account those probabilities and really valuing as of the date of the gift. All right, and you can't use, for the most part, you can't use subsequent events to change an estate or gift tax return. That's it. Happy holidays to everybody. Happy and healthy, prosperous New Year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan, for the update. Now I'd like to introduce our international tax expert, Shaune Scutellaro, who's going to bring us up to date on, I think, some W-8 forms.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jim.
No problem, Shaune.
All right, everybody. I got a little tired of speaking to you about the FBAR or the FinCEN 114 every single month, so I decided to find something else to speak about. And you know, just as far as updates go, pretty much any update you'll get will be about the FBAR and the FATCA forms, the 8938, and all those changes, the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program changes. But we have kind of gone over them the past few months, but just keep that in mind. Keep yourself up to date on where those requirements sit. That's always something to think about. So today I'm going to talk about W-8 forms. What I've noticed is a lot of larger companies now have, due to the kind of impending FATCA regulation and everything, rather than when normally somebody would just send out a W-9 form and ask for information, basically the new package is the W-9 form and all 4 different W-8 forms. And mostly you can just kind of tell your client to disregard them. They have nothing to worry about. But if you do have some foreign clients, or if you have clients that are making payments to foreign persons and need to know which form they need to get back, just something to kind of put in everybody's mind to think about. So we'll start up there. I don't know how clearly you can see it, but there's turn off the front lights. Jim, are the lights over there? Yeah, the opposite. Better? All right, so we got these. There's 4 forms, and there's a draft updated form of the W-8BENE that I'll go into later. But just to kind of quickly go through it, the easy ones are Form W-8 ECI, and just to pull that up. And all the forms generally look pretty much the same up top. They're going to go through you, or your client's going to understand, you know, kind of up there. They're going to say, okay, there's these different W-8 forms, and here's when you use it. So it's right there. You don't even have to dig into the instructions for it, what you're using. And the ECI form is basically going to tell whoever's paying you money, hey, I have this income is effectively connected with a U.S. trade or business, so you don't have to withhold anything because I'm going to file a tax return and I'm going to pay taxes on it myself, and the IRS knows who I am, and you know there's no issues there. So that's kind of your easy, one of your easy forms. Another one of the easy ones, the W8EXP, which is going to be for foreign governments or other foreign tax-exempt organizations. Again, you're going to see that same kind of list of instructions up the top. Okay, use this form if you are this type of person. If you are this type of person, go to the ECI form, go to the BEN form. So it shouldn't be too hard to follow there. And you're going to kind of give, just as in the ECI, you can give your basic information for the taxpayer, the type of entity, name, address, ID number if they have one, and then you're going to, basically on all of these, check some boxes to kind of qualify, okay, this is the type of entity I am that you're looking for, and this is why I'm filing this form, and certify it at the bottom just like a W-9 form. So the EXP is another easy one too, because you're sending it out and there's really only a couple specific type of entities that are going to use it, and you probably won't deal with it too much. The W8IMY, that's for intermediaries, foreign pass-through entities, partnerships and the like. And we have some clients that are operating, even though it's they have a U.S. disregarded entity that's doing the U.S. operations. Maybe it's really run through a Cayman Island partnership or something like that. But all the money is kept here in the U.S. So you're going to have a U.S. bank asking you, well, what type of entity are you? Provide your information. And this is the form, in that sort of instance with hedge funds, private equity. That's kind of where things are going. So you're going to have to give them this form. So what do? You probably have some foreign partners and some U.S. partners, or maybe one or all foreign partners, all U.S. partners in some instances. So you're going to have to look to the regs 1441-1, and that's going to tell you there's kind of a list of information you can give out to say, hey, this is the intermediary, but here are all the partners of that, here are all their percentages, and this is what you really should be withholding. And then you're going to provide either the W-9 form for the U.S. partners or the appropriate W-8 form for any foreign partners of that intermediary or foreign owners, members, whatever it may be, so that the bank or whoever it is who's paying the foreign intermediary the money, they'll know, okay, this is what I have to withhold as backup withholding, and that's why. And then last, we have the current W-8BEN form, and this is going to be used for a couple of reasons. And again, same thing up there. You're going to give all your information. They're going to tell you why you want to use this form and when you should look to another one. Right now, mostly it's used when you've got a beneficial owner of the payment that's going out who's foreign, and they're claiming tax treaty benefits, saying, you don't have to withhold at the standard 30, withhold at a reduced 5%, reduced 10%. And they're going to give you that. They're going to say, hey, here's the tax treaty article that I'm referencing for that reduced rate. Here's the country that I'm a citizen of or I was formed in, and then they're going to sign the bottom of that. It's also used when you're a foreign resident who, you're saying, I'm a foreign resident, I have no connection to the U.S., all the work is being done outside of the U.S., and you have no requirement to withhold because of that. So that's most commonly what you're going to see it for at this moment. And as you can see, the IRS up till now kept a good job of keeping this form to one page, pretty straightforward and simple, and then you sign at the bottom. But the thing to look out for is this new draft form, the W8BENE, which is got a lot more going on to it. It's now 6 pages long. Yeah. And the reason being is now, if you're a foreign financial institution, there's about 15 different classifications, 10, 15 different classifications of type of foreign financial institution and what's a withholdable payment and the like. And for most people working on individual clients, certainly this is not something you're going to have to get too deep into detail of, and certainly not something I can do in 5 minutes. But just know that this is on the horizon, and this is what the form is going to look like. And so when you go down to it, you see these little 2 boxes, non-foreign financial entity. That's kind of going to replace for any entities that would have received the WBEN to claim those treaty benefits or say I'm a foreign person and I'm not a financial institution, but I still don't have any U.S. permanent establishment, no U.S. tax nexus. These boxes down here, that's kind of what you're going to want to concern yourself with, and then fill out the related part, kind of similar to how it was, but with a whole bunch of information in between that you can probably just skip over. As you can see, all the different types of foreign financial institution information that they're going to want from people. So just know that it's going to be a bigger form in the future, and you're just going to have to kind of wade through all of that to help your client if they're a non-financial foreign entity. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult to go through. So, but that's about it. Just be aware of that, and again, same thing with the FBARs and the FATCA forms. Be aware of those limits, and I'm sure we'll talk about them in depth next time, because I'm going to be doing a little talking and looking for, hopefully we'll get another speaker to kind of supplement that, but we'll go into a little bit more detail about that in January. So, thanks, Jim.
Thanks a lot, Shaune. And as Shaune said, I mean, these forms have become very complicated. So our January session, which is going to be in the EisnerAmper building, where I believe is in Iselin, we're going to go through all the forms that are required from a partnership, an S-Corp, Corp, individual standpoint, and we're going to go through all the forms that are required from a foreign standpoint that are related to those, tax returns. So that'll be our January seminar. Today's program, we started off, or we actually ended last month's session talking about e-filing procedures. What do you do with the 8879s? When do you have to sign them? Are you allowed to hoard them? Can you hold them if the client doesn't make a payment? So we started this whole thing. So we figured as we go into tax season, it would be a good topic to at least get our, our procedures in place in our office related to some of these forms. We also have today, and Howard Bookbinder is going to do most of the talking on that. We also have today a state representative coming from the state of New Jersey, Irwin Nadel, and he's going to talk about the e-filing for the state of New Jersey. So there he is. So
Sorry, everybody.
Anyway, Irwin's going to bring us up to date. I mean, we all file corporate tax returns in the state of New Jersey, and the most confusing thing to our clients is when we're mailing them a corporate return out, right? And it says sign the electronic form and send it back to us. We're going to e-file it for you. Then you tell them to take this other form and send it in an envelope. I mean, it's very confusing to our clients. It's one of the only forms that we still can e-file is the corporate New Jersey corporate business tax return. So hopefully, Irwin is going to tell us today that we're going to be able to do it this tax season. So hopefully we're going to get a little early gift from Irwin today on the filing. We're trying to figure out the corporate business tax returns.
Oh, I got that simple.
Yeah, so we're trying to, and that's been one of the big issues, trying to hopefully get that, so that we can electronically file that for our clients. So I'm going to turn it over to Irwin, who's going to bring us up to date on the e-filing process at the state of New Jersey.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Irwin.
Sorry about running late.
No, you're right on time.
Again, I always like to start off by first saying good morning to everybody, and then, many of you have probably heard me speak before. I've come with a handout, but I'm just going to use it as a guide. I generally don't speak from that. I try to make this a one-on-one conversation between me and everybody out in the audience. My goal here is to give you information that's useful to you so you can do your job, which incidentally helps me do my job, eliminate paper. Okay, the first start off with this, stutter here. Is everybody aware that New Jersey is now going forward with the 1041, the fiduciary return for electronic filing? No, we are. Its first year is this year. What I'm going to tell you is reach out to your software developer. This is very important to find out if they are participating. If they are not participating, you will have to use an opt-out form for your clients. And the reason why you're hearing me, a guy who always opposed the opt-out form, telling you to use the opt-out form, unfortunately, the 1041 comes under the 1040 e-file regulation. I know of only one software developer right now who's going to be producing 1041 software. I've already had the NACTP, are people familiar with that acronym, NACTP? It's Coalition of Software Developers, reach out to me several times to say that it's not fair that New Jersey put an e-file mandate on that. We really didn't put an e-file mandate on that. It's just the way the 1041 works in the state of New Jersey, it's intertwined with the 1040. So the reg that drives the 1040 drives the 1041. So if your software developer is not producing 1041 software, please use the opt-out form. This is probably the only time you'll ever hear me say something like that. Yes, sir.
Who is producing it?
I want to say, you know, that's a good question. I want to say it's Thomson Reuters. I believe it is, but I'm not sure. That's the only one we've gotten so far for testing. Doesn't mean your software developer's not producing it. You're going to want to reach out to them to find out. Because believe me, I mean, I used to stand up in front of this room, and I'm going to go through a story. Oh, I want to say maybe 12, 13 years ago, I was standing in this room. There was a gentleman sitting in the front row who just absolutely opposed e-file. And he said to me, I just want you to know I have 3,000 clients, and my secretary has 3,000 opt-out forms. And I was thinking to myself way back when, you're telling me, a state official, that you're going to oppose an e-file mandate. Now, here I am 13 years later, standing in front of a group who's saying, when's the e-file software going to be ready, correct? I love the way this is done at 360, to be honest with you. Being an IT representative and being someone who loves the elimination of paper, I love to see people who want to move forward. So again, reach out to your developers on the 1041. Yes, sir.
So there will be a new NJ 1041 opt-out form that you're creating?
The gentleman wants to know if there will be a new NJ 1041 opt-out form. I had the same question raised to me by the NACTPA, and I've sent that. I'm from the Division of Revenue. I'm not from the Division of Taxation. I'm in charge of the data streams. Taxation is in charge of the regs and the rules. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I have not seen a 1041 opt-out form yet. Does not mean there's not going to be one. If you do not have one, use the 1040 and just write on the top 1041. I've asked the Division of Taxation simply relabeling the form and putting 1041 on there, but as of today, I've not seen one. For 1040, we have no major changes this year, with the exception of, I can remember when we first switched from paper, and all the practitioners would say to me, well, how do I send my attachments? The things I want to use to verify my client's reason for using that number. And with e-file, a lot of that went away. The biggest issue, as I recall, was Federal Schedule D. And I can remember looking at some of those attachments that practitioners would attach to returns, and I would need a box to put them in because they were computer printouts of day traders. And I got to be honest with you, nobody is probably going to look at that. I'm not an auditor, but imagine an auditor. You guys do that better than I do, picking up that and saying, do I really need to look at this? At that point, I was able to convince the state and to a great degree, the feds to say, you know what, let's let them put the bottom line in. This year, however, we are doing what's called binary attachments. People familiar with that term, binary attachment? It simply means a PDF form that you scan in. So if you want to substantiate something on the return, we will be allowing that this year. There are some quasi-issues with it, however, that we're dealing with software developers. That is, how many of you go out on the internet and all of a sudden it slows up and you're wondering what the heck is going on? Why can't I get to this site? It's got to be my software provider. Now, what you got to understand is called bandwidth. And bandwidth is ever expanding or shrinking. So when you bring these forms, they translate to bytes. Bytes, megabytes, gigabytes. You know, you get a large form, it's hard to handle. So what we're dealing with this year is the unknown. How many forms can we accept? How many bytes per form? I did the math. I said I'm willing to accept, because being a computer guy and being a guy who went to college for mathematics, I said, okay, let me do the math here. And I came up to something that I thought was, I want to say reasonable, but to some of you may be considered unreasonable, which is 40 bytes for forms, or one form, 200 bytes. 200 megabytes, I'm sorry, megabytes. That, to be honest with you, could be 4 Word documents, or it could be 10 spreadsheets. It's hard to figure out. So we're kind of playing it by ear the first year, so please be patient with us. The goal is to bring this data in. We just don't know what's going to do to our system when it hits and how we're going to handle it. So you got to learn to walk before you learn to run. My goal is, over the course of the next couple of years, to allow CPAs to send in whatever they need to send in that they want to use to substantiate the return. Now again, in e-file, that's something you've not been able to do. And I got to be honest with you, what I notice is, because I go and I sift through some of the paper returns, and I see paper returns filed for an electronic return. Because people feel that, well, I still need to send in that documentation, so they file a duplicate return. Now, I don't know if anybody in this audience does that, but it happens more often than I like to admit. We have, I want to say, 450,000 returns, possible returns that can be filed between 4.2, 4.5 million, and we receive 5.4 million. So you know there's a lot of duplication all over the place. What's that?
Do they pay double or look for double refunds?
Interesting question. Now, most of it is those people want to attach the forms. So that's something we're really working towards doing for you. Also with MEF. People familiar with MEF, Modernized e-file, the Fed's platform, which we piggyback? You can now do prior year returns. What I'm working on, I'm trying to think how many years I can go back. Right now, I've talked my programmers into going 2 years back. We started in 2011. We're going to accept 2011, 2012 returns, as well as 2013. I've got to find, however, a reasonable point to say I can't accept back returns. When you do that, what you've got to understand is, you guys know how New Jersey works. We're not like the feds. We calculate our own income. We change that return quite frequently. So that means that the edit rules and the masks, or the field masks, have to change every year. So that means I have to run back year programs. As you run too many back year programs, you run the risk of having edit rules step on each other. So I have to come up with what's reasonable. And that's something I'll be working with my director, Jim Shaune, on real soon to say, what is reasonable for us to go back? What I want to ask you is, what do you believe is reasonable? You file the returns. Tell me, how many years back do you think I should go as I investigate this? Right. So that's pretty much what you find. You really have no need for anything beyond that. Okay.
Well, that's what you should do. What about amended return?
We can only do what the feds will allow us to do. When the feds allow us to introduce amended returns, believe me, I'm jumping on the bandwagon. That I can guarantee. That's a good question. So you've got to keep your eye open to what the IRS allows, not what New Jersey allows when it comes to the piggyback applications. Everybody knows what the mandate is. Everybody understands that you've got more than, I believe it's 10 returns. You've got to file them electronically, correct? And I think I don't even have to go over those regs any longer, simply because people are screaming at me, why isn't electronic available? I know we're going to be talking about the corporate return in a couple minutes. I do want to talk about some changes to the 1065. Everybody's aware that practitioners who file must file electronically and pay electronically, correct? The 10 or more partners, that's gone away with. That deals only with the companies filing on their own behalf if they have 10 or more partners. The goal is just to have you guys help us do business easier, more efficiently, and that is by electronic filing. Now, what I've always said to the audience is, you know, you can file on paper, and I still receive partnership returns that are filed on paper that go against the reg, that have been filed by practitioners, whether it be CPA or otherwise. I got a question about a month ago from the Taxation Administration, and this by no means says what they're going to do, but they asked me, how simple is it to find the practitioners who've done this if we get paper and there's nothing on it? Can we track it back? So that tells you that taxation is starting to look at this. They're starting to look at it for 1040 as well. The downside on the 1065 is if a practitioner elects to file it on paper, it's not the practitioner that gets penalized, whereas on the 1040 it is. 1065, your clients get penalized. And I do have to tell you, I've gotten calls, I've gotten governor referrals, legislative referrals from companies that have said, why am I penalized for not filing my return? My practitioner filed it on such and such a date and gave me a copy showing me the date. And then I have to write a nice letter back explaining, just as you said, because it was filed on paper. The way the database reads it, as if it's not filed at all, although we calculate it. We take the money, obviously, if there's a check with it, and we bank the money. But we treat the return itself as if it's not been filed. Yes?
Excuse me, sometimes I have a lot of problems with inactive partnerships, but the partners are fighting like crazy. And it's easy to e-file the return, then nobody wants to pay electronically. You have to give like a paper that Part 100. So it goes against our rules as a practitioner, but the state's got to recognize that sometimes we're at the mercy of our clients. Because the parties will fight, I'm going to pay this fee, are you kidding me? I was involved in this partnership. So it's easy to e-file 1065, but the Part 100, it's tough. We're at the mercy of our clients sometimes.
Did you ever hear the gentleman said? He's saying that it's difficult when your clients do not want to pay. Now, you can file it, but we want the voucher and we're going to mail it in. Well, we want to go back to how the penalty is done. Well, if they want to do that, guess what happens to them? They get penalized.
I'm not concerned about their penalty. I'm concerned about...
No, your penalty is only on the 1040. Partnerships, nah, you don't get penalized. We smack the partner. That's where I get really particular or concerned on practitioners saying to me, I don't care what the state does. Okay, you're allowed to conduct business the way you want to conduct business, but understand who you're impacting, your client. Now, in this case, or in your example, it's reversed. Your clients are making a poor decision because they are going to get smacked. And you know what? The state never does it immediately, do we? The gentleman says 3 years later. It could be a year, 2 years, 3 years later. That's the reality. And everybody wants to know, well, why this happened? What did I do wrong? It happens. Hopefully, we will get to a point where it doesn't take that long. And I think that's where we're trying to get. Realize, the state of New Jersey has crawled out of the dilemma it was in a few years ago, but government is always looking to increase revenue sources. That's what government does, unfortunately. And if people don't want to follow the rules for helping government to become more efficient, government's going to find ways to penalize. There's no other way. Without a hammer, you can't get people to participate, and that's unfortunate. Just think about the many of you who I stood before here in this office or any other of the speaking engagements I did throughout the state who would complain to me, I don't want to e-file, puts the responsibility on me. Do many of you remember those conversations? How many of you feel that way today? One gentleman raised his hand, and he's joking. I see the smile on his face. You understand that it's far more efficient for you to do business that way. It's off your desk a lot quicker. Your clients get their refunds a lot quicker, and it removes you from having to call the Division of Taxation to say, where's my refund? It's just a far more efficient way of doing business. So I applaud you for helping me, so thank you.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Did I hear you say that we are going to be penalized if anybody uses an opt-out form not filing electronically?
Oh, no. The gentleman asked me, did I say that you will be penalized for using an opt-out form? Never. Never be penalized for using an opt-out form. I caution you, however, the opt-out form, if you mail it in, we don't care about it. We don't care if you attach it to the return. You must maintain that opt-out form in your office. You are supposed to not tell your clients to opt out, with the exception of the 1041. For the 1040 or the 1065, well, I don't believe there's a 1065 opt-out form, it's just the 1040. You are not supposed to tell your client to opt out. Your client is supposed to come into you and say, I don't want to do this, and then you use the opt-out form. But let me finish. Having said that, I've always said one day the Division of Taxation is going to want to begin looking at this. I alluded a few moments ago to a conversation where I was being asked questions by the head of the Division of Taxation. If I were you guys and your clients are opting out on 1040, I'd keep those opt-out forms in my files. You get the hint? Yes.
I've had problems with one particular return where they're a domestic partnership and doing married separate from the state and single for federal. It always gets rejected by the state. At the January meeting, I spoke with people from the Division of Taxation, said, oh, it's your software provider, it's this, file the Jersey one first, always gets rejected. I finally just have the guy sign an opt-out.
And that would be fine.
But
You can explain it.
Resolution to this issue?
Yeah, it's your software developer. You want to give me your name and number.
Okay, because the software, it's saying that it's rejected because marital status is different. And I file the Jersey one first. I wait, it gets rejected before you can file the federal. So how is it reaching out to Social Security, seeing that this person is not married?
No, it's your software developer doing something wrong because we accept that. And often when I get you on the phone with the software developer, when you call in, you get a hotline. When I call in, I get the manager of the programming unit. I've worked with Howard a number of times over the years.
So it's a big fraud.
Oh, the 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah, this is Intuit, and you know, again, every year.
Stop by and see me. I'm going to give you my card. My number's changed. I have to write my phone number on it. I want to talk to you about this because I'll get you on the phone with Intuit.
Right.
And watch how they change their tune. Or, you know what, I know something? If it's something I need to do and I'm not aware of, and I become aware of it during that moment of the conversation, I'll fix it. The question I have is, you're the only one having that problem. Is anybody else having that problem? And who's your software developer? Is anybody, Lacert? It's Intuit. Does anybody else have another software provider that has that problem? Is it Intuit software or is it? Okay. Does anybody else have that problem with another software product? The reason why I ask, because it could be me. I don't believe it's me, but it could be me. And if it is me, I'll fix it. But when you tell me it's one software developer, especially when 3 people all raise their hand with one software developer, I'm inclined to believe it's the software provider. Now, I don't want to point a finger at the software provider. What I want to do is work with you and the software provider to fix the problem. That's my goal. Yes, ma'am.
I filed federal first, and then wait till that gets accepted, then I do New York, sorry.
But it would be regardless whether you did it first or not, because what you're doing, the way, to be honest with you, the way it works is if you're filing the Fed return separately from the state return, you're filing the state return as a state only. And the way the return is bundled, the feds never look at it. They see the social and pass it to the state. So it wouldn't matter whether it's first or second. Don't change what you're doing, however, if it works for you. Yes, sir.
One of the issues last year, I think at the beginning of the season, it was taking 7, 8, 9 days to get acceptances back from the state. And then towards the end of the season, it slowed down again quite a bit. It's pretty nerve-wracking.
Understood. Here's where I'm going to tell you. MEF is a unique situation. The IRS is a unique animal, and so is state government. The IRS opened up MEF to shut its legacy system down last year. Does everybody know that? It closed its legacy system, and it said, we are going to use this lovely 1,000-lane highway called the Internet to bring all returns in from around the country. New Jersey is one of the 6 big hitter states. We're a little state, but we're a big hitter. We are the most densely populated state in the nation, as we've all learned in school throughout my life, my children's lives, and probably your grandchildren's lives. Now, you compound that with New York and with all the other little states or the other big states. Do you think that the IRS underestimated the traffic? Do you think the state made mistakes in its program to get its returns through the Internet the most efficient way? Do you think the software developers were not prepared? All 3.
They're not working for the exchange.
All 3. That's what happened. The IRS, it was interesting for me to be involved on conference calls or it was interesting for me to have my staff. I don't know how many of you dealt with Anthony Johnson, my e-file coordinator, the #1 guy who takes care of e-file now. He's really the guy, not me any longer. To sit on calls, to send emails, to get no response, or hear the IRS say it's not us, hear the developer say it's not us, and hear the state say it's not us. Okay, how many of us have multiple kids who all break something in the house but nobody knows who did it? What we ultimately found out at the end of the year, after tax season was over, that the IRS couldn't handle the volume, the software developers' feeds weren't quick enough, and New Jersey made mistakes in its programming. The hope is for this year that we don't go through that again. But understand that last year was the first year that the IRS shut down legacy and everything came through MEF. How many of you have opened or first opened your business or multiple locations, and logistically you try to plan everything out, but it doesn't go as smoothly as you think it's going to? I mean, I already know the answer to that. Everybody. It never goes the way you think it's going to go, but you learn from your experiences. Now, if you have the same problem year in and year out, then that's an issue. I do understand the practitioner community's issue with I don't know what's going on. I look through the audience, I see faces that I recognize, who I have dealt with or my staff has dealt with numerous times in email. We're always willing to help. We will get back to you. And we can't answer the million calls that are going to come in. I have a small staff. But if you get to the CPA Society, Howard or someone will get to me. Won't you, Howard?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of avenues for you to go to say there is a problem. If there's a problem, I mean, I'm willing to accept lists so that my staff will go look them up and feed them back to the CPA Society to say, gentlemen, here's the status of those returns, if that's the issue.
You were very fast to respond last year because the biggest problem was LaCert. Because they refused. Oh, if you don't mandate it and shove it down our throat, we're not doing it.
Right.
That was their answer.
That's always Intuit's answer. Yes, sir.
With the 1041, it seems like most of us in this room are not going to be able to file them electronically.
And I assume that already.
So as it stands now, we're going to have to get the client to opt out.
Yes.
Can you use your influence to do a 1041 opt-out where we can say it's a software?
Working on it. Want it. Sent an email yesterday to follow up with the manager on the other side to say, what's the status?
That would help us.
Working on it.
Thank you.
Very much want it. Yes, sir.
Part of the opt-out, especially on the 1041 now, you said it was the formula file. I'm inclined to keep one file for all the opt-outs so that you come back
Awesome.
and say, you know, we got a full 50 or whatever the number of files. If you're not looking at the returns themselves, it's just that form. The cost to retrieve them from wherever we keep them is exceeding the cost of having a payment fee.
Did everybody hear what the gentleman said? He's saying that he is going to keep all his opt-out forms in one file so that should someone come and want to see them, he can pull them out. I can't tell you how to do business, but that's how I do it. I wouldn't put it in individual income tax files because then if you've got 40 opt-out forms, it means you've got to go to those 40 files. First of all, you got to remember who opted out. Go to the file because you get an auditor coming in. He's not going to tell you who opted out. He's going to say, I want to see your opt-out forms. We recognize that you have some. And he's going to keep in his back pocket who he knows didn't file electronically. Yes?
I have a question and a follow-up. They're going to do like the IRS now visits people. Are they going to start doing that?
The gentleman is asking me if the Division of Taxation is going to come visit. I am not the Division of Taxation. I will go back to something I said about 10 minutes ago. I was asked a question. How do you identify who is not filing electronically, and do we know who has signed opt-out forms? Question was asked of me. I'm a pretty intuitive guy. I think that you people, everybody here passed a CPA Association exam. Probably the hardest exam anybody has to take. Let's be intuitive. What do you think? I would believe it's going to start happening. I can't say it is or it isn't. But I would believe it might. That gentleman who sat before me 10, 13 years ago, whatever it was, and said, I have 3,000 clients and I'm going to have 3,000 opt-out forms, he won't get a visit. You know, I can't say what they're going to do. I can believe that it probably will happen.
Irwin, we have a meeting with Mike Bryan on January 8th.
Yes.
Would you be present at that meeting?
I doubt it. Jim Shaune probably will.
Okay.
But you know, I don't know what their plans are. You can tell him that I said that I've always recommended that you keep them in. You can say that I said I was questioned about the opt-out form. I can't say what they're going to do. And I don't know whether he'll disclose what he's going to do. He may not do it. But let me ask you, is it worth the risk? Howard's going to have the meeting. Howard's going to ask the question. Whether he's going to get the right answer or not, or not the right answer, whether the state knows whether it's going to do it or not just yet. They may not know at the time Howard asked the question, so the answer might give maybe an honest answer. I'm telling you, I'm standing before you, and I'm telling you that I believe it's eventually going to happen. I may be retired by the time it happens, but I'm protecting myself. Because remember, what's the statute of limitation on something like this? Is there one? I don't know the answer to that. So I wouldn't take the risk. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, what was that? The gentleman is questioning the validity of why someone would actually use opt-out forms. I'm going, and he's right, because everybody's e-filing, and you know what? You're right. You're right. But who would send in a paper form? Someone who doesn't want to leave a trail. What does that mean? Fraud, EITC fraud. So when you say, are people going to look at it? Yeah, yes. There are a million reasons to want to look at it. The other thing is most of the people here, I'm going to speak for most of you, I'm going to use that term, most of you, love e-file. There are still some practitioners who don't e-file. I liken this to a comment I used to make where I went to Atlantic City, Ocean County, and there was a gentleman questioning me about not e-file, because he was diametrically opposed to it. He was questioning me about why his computer software used to calculate returns. He did it with a pencil. I've taken on new responsibilities in my role in government. I'm now in charge of document retention as well, and retention schedules. And I work with all the counties and municipalities. And I have one of my staff yesterday, my new staff, and I was trying to give them the rah-rah speech of why we want to go out to municipalities and figure it out. And I was using e-file as an example about sometimes how hand-holding will get people to understand the benefit of using a product. And I began talking about, software. And he turned to me and he said, I still do mine with a pencil. This is one of my staff. I just had to look at him and say, you have programs that calculate this for you and you're still doing it with a pencil? So that just tells you the mindset of some people. No matter what you do, you are not going to change it. And unfortunately, yes, there's still people who will not e-file. And they figure, come get me. And they get that comfort level because the state's not come to get them yet. But that's where it happens 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and all of a sudden it's a big surprise. Yes, sir.
Yes, but technically, e-file mandates for 2004, so you might be having like 10 years worth of look back, and some people didn't necessarily embrace it right away, and they might not even be keeping returns in storage after a certain amount of years. So if the service is going to go back 10 years, different issue than prospectively.
The gentleman is trying to understand based on what was 10 years ago versus today, will the state go back that far? I do not believe, and I can't speak for the Division of Taxation, that the state would do anything unreasonable. Those are all. Notice I said I believe. I didn't definitively state anything. I'm going to kind of slither away from this by saying I'm not the Division of Taxation. I will also say that I know Howard, I know Alan Price, I know many of the people who attend those directors meetings, and before they go, they check the listserv to find out pertinent questions. Howard's busy writing in his pad. I'm sure that these will become topics of discussion. I'm pretty sure my director, Mike Bryan's going to send me an email saying, "What did you say?" And I come out to these meetings, and this is why I'm always invited. I try to speak the truth. I try to get everybody to understand what the possibilities are to protect yourselves. What I appreciate is the business we've done over the course of the 13 or 14, I can't remember now, I've been doing this since 1998. So for the life of the time I've been coming here, been dealing with many of you, and again, as I look out in the audience, I see very familiar faces. So I am going to try and guide you. What I say may not come to pass, but it's done so that you understand that people are talking about it or thinking about it. That's the best I can do for you. You know, I'm a firm believer that my job is to guide. I'm a service-oriented individual, and I'm just simply trying to provide a service. Okay? Now, on the partnership returns, I do want to say at this particular point, uptake is at about 75%. This is quick math in my head. This shows that of the 288,000 partnerships that were filed, 261,000 were done electronically. That really equates to more like 85%, but I drop it down 10% because, again, there's duplication. There's that not warm and fuzzy feeling that someone has that the electronic return is going to get through, even though you get an acknowledgement. The other thing that I do want to talk about, and I worked very hard with this, I do not know how many of you own Thomson Reuters software for partnership returns and the problems Thomson Reuters had with 1065s last year, and where they received them from you but never sent them to us. Let me stop. And all of you got notices, or your clients got notices, I should say, and that I'm sure your clients made a beeline to you with a notice. My relationship with software developers is much like my relationship with you. They are trying to do an honest job. I am trying to do right by them. They identified a glitch in their software. They told me about it after April 15th. I went to the Division of Taxation with a list of thousands and said, can we go in there and make these timely? And we did. We accepted the payment in July. We made them timely. Because if you do business with someone, you're going to try and do it correctly. Now, it was my recommendation, but ultimately the Division of Taxation makes that decision. So when you talk about what's reasonable, they felt that was reasonable. I got an email, and why I bring it up, from Thomson Reuters, I want to say today's Friday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, I can't remember, saying that some of those people are getting noticed again. We thought that you fixed it. I sent that email to the Division of Taxation. They did some checking. Some of the Part 100s came in September after we had fixed it. We are going out there Monday, and we're going to fix the remaining returns. Again, because it's reasonable. It was a glitch in the software. It was not something done intentionally. It was not something that the partnership intended to do by being foolish because they're fighting with one another. Who's going to send in the check and not realize it's going to hurt both? You know, the dissolution of a partnership who owes money from last year, and they get into those fights that you guys have to deal with every day. And I know a little bit about this because my cousin just went through that, and we were sitting at the dinner table talking about it during a holiday. I said, dummy, send the check in. I said, because when the state comes after, they're coming after you. Your name's written on there. You can sue your partner for the money later. So it's just get the money in, get it fixed. If it's a reasonable reason, we fix it. If it's the partner's fault, because they're going to be foolish, then they get penalized. And I know many of you come to us and say, can you help us with this? Can you help us with this? And to the degree we can, we do. But sometimes we can't. Now, when we go back to the original question, will taxation be reasonable? Just keep that in your back pocket, all the things that they've been reasonable about. So I think this becomes a discussion that you bring up to the table when it happens, and they try and do it reasonably. Remember, administrators or people working for administrators or people even lower than that who are in the midst of their career are always trying to identify milestones to mark their career so they get promoted. Private industry is no different than the public sector. Now you get people who get ideas. Oh, if I do this, we can bring this revenue, and if we do this. So things are being talked about all the time. But I do not believe that's something that would be done without your knowledge of it first. Again, I've already brought it up to you as something to think about in the years to come. All right, I'm going to move on, let that subject die. If you have issues with software developers, you can contact me. My director, this is his. How many of you have ever met Jim Shaune? The man can write what do I want to call this? Screen show in about an hour. Takes me about a day. So I stole his. He's got his phone number, his secretary's phone number on here. I'm going to give you, I was going to give you Anthony Johnson's, but I can't remember it. Howard, I'm going to shoot you the number. I apologize. I'll shoot you the number later, because if I give you my number, you're never going to get me. So I'm going to get, Howard, I'll shoot you Anthony Johnson's number later today. I apologize for that. Because if there are issues with software developers, we need to know about it. If the software developer says it's the state's fault, and the state's saying it's the developer's fault, I hate that back and forth. If you call the Division of Taxation Practitioner Hotline, that's what you're going to get, because they don't have the power to contact the developer in the way that my staff does. So I'll get you that number, and again, I apologize.
We had that last year with the CERT.
Yes.
As soon as I had been notified by some of the members of this committee, I did call you.
Yes, you did.
And it turned, CERT just became very ornery, to use the word, okay? And they said, it's not mandated, we're not going to do it.
That's corp tax you're talking about.
That was corp tax.
Yes, and they're testing it right now.
And I thought that was corrected. So if you had a corporation that was on extension September 15th, October 15th, they would have accepted it. They said no, it's for the 13 year, not for the 12 year.
That's unfortunate. I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. And they're right, but I got to figure a way around that. But that's kind of right.
Irwin?
Yes.
Anthony's number is 609.
There we go.
777-4216.
Perfect. I knew the 777 part. I couldn't remember. If I want to talk to Anthony, I just get out of my office and I walk around the corner and there he is.
Can you repeat that? The number? Can you repeat the number?
609-777-4216.
609-777-4216. I know you want it for the lovely people in the audience. Jim touches on something in his presentation that I will talk about for 2 seconds. PCI compliance. People familiar with that term? Payment card industry, the standards set by payment card industry, and the big click term of safety and the safety of your credit card information. What's that?
You send it through Target, right?
The state of New Jersey has undertaken a project which it completed this year to make all its web apps PCI compliant. So when you go onto the state web applications, understand and feel confident that it's PCI compliant. It was a long process to identify all the issues identified not only by the payment card industry, but by the IRS under Pub 1075 as well. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about security based on all the changes the IRS are making with Pub 1075. There used to be a gentleman who worked for state government. This is going back early in my career. And we would develop systems and design systems, and we'd have to meet with him. And I'd walk out of the meeting being a middle-level employee wanting to choke myself. Looking at my management and saying, I designed this system and I had somebody just shoot it down. Now I have to redesign it. I'm spinning my wheels. They want to make the system so tight that you can't conduct business. And we were able to turn those mindsets around 20 years ago to say that you've got to be able to conduct business. But with how security is turning around now, systems are being designed so stringently with the idea of security that takes precedence over the design of the system when you begin to design a system. You've got people stealing information all over the place. And that has become one of the biggest issues for the IRS. And I'm going to give you an example, then I'm going to get off of the subject so everybody understands where government, where industry, where anybody who collects money is going. You have a firewall. People familiar with the term firewall? It is the security. Think of an impenetrable force field that nobody can get in. State has a firewall. IRS sends returns. We allow a hole in the firewall to allow the returns to come through. They've got the security to get through. It sits on our server. Once the return comes through, force field back up again. Nobody can penetrate the firewall. People are trying all the time, but you can't. The IRS are saying, okay, we understand you can't. We understand. We see your encryptions. You've given us your algorithms. We don't care. Once the data hits the server, we want it encrypted there as well. So now they're telling us, if you're going to do business with us, you've got to go 2 steps further. That's where security is going these days. And it's not just in government, it's everywhere. I tell this story when we begin talking about this. When Citibank, I don't remember if people remember, I think it was 8 years ago, got hit for the first time for those 40,000 clients, and it hit the newspaper. 40,000 of their customers, I was one of them. I remember when that happened, and I remember thinking, I have a Citibank credit card. And within a day, Citibank sent me a letter, told me how they dealt with it, and sent me a new credit card and assured me in writing that I had nothing to worry about. And I will tell you this, because I threw Citibank's name out there, I never had a problem. So security is on the minds of everybody and taking care of it. Now the lovely topic you were talking about when I walked in the door, corp tax. We have approximately 6 developers testing right now. I don't want to speak off the top of my head. I sent Anthony an email yesterday trying to get who the developers were. He sent me a lovely email back. It's in the spreadsheet that sits on a share drive that I forgot to go to. My fault. Howard, I'm going to send you a list of, as soon as I get back in the office, as I walk out here, of the developers who passed so far. No one's testing with us. We introduced a mandate because, as Howard said, every developer said to me, I'm not doing this unless you put a mandate out. I was calling the developers personally. And they said, not doing it. You don't get a mandate out. I'm not doing it. I sent an email to Jim Shaune and Mike Bryan and said, guys, they're not doing it unless we got a mandate. Mike Bryan said, oh, I can fix that. And a mandate was drafted. And it was drafted more in lines of what the feds are doing. I would have liked to see it a little tighter. Don't tell Mike I said that. But it was drafted. What was this year, everybody? Can anybody tell me what this year was? Election year? Do you think anybody was signing anything that might be perceived as not beneficial by someone? I'm still waiting for it to be signed. So you still may have that issue with your developer. Like I said, I saw a lot more developers in the chain this year. Now we got 44,000 corp tax returns electronically last year, mostly from Thomson Reuters. They have 3 products out there. They put all 3 products for e-file. and I can't remember who the other developer was, but we had 44,000 returns. Now, how many people here were able to file electronic corp tax last year? You all own Thomson Reuters, I would assume, right?
No.
Who's the other company?
Drake.
Oh, Drake. Who's that? Drake and who? ATX, not CCH, because I spoke with CCH because they said they wouldn't do it unless there was a mandate, but they're testing right now.
It's from C Corp or S Corp?
Both.
I was able to do some at the end of the season with
Who introduced it? Who was the software developer?
ProSystem.
Okay, then I take that back. Then they did eventually join because I know their management quite well, and I was on the phone with them constantly. So they did.
Until near the end.
Okay, because I know they're testing right now. Yes. I stand to be corrected, and I apologize.
I was able to e-file all of my CPTs, but no corporate extensions, no New Jersey extensions. That can be available to you.
Let me write that down because I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it's.
Yeah, we couldn't do the extensions.
It could.
For 12, you can't do it electronically.
I gotta find out for 13 because it may be me. It may have been an oversight on my part. It may be the IRS isn't allowing it. I honestly don't know the answer.
Yeah. We had the same problem.
I'm going to send an email to Howard when I get out of here. My goal is to get back to the office today. So as soon as I walk in the door, I'm going to ask that question. And if I can do it, I will do it. Even though my developers are going to scream at me, why are you introducing this so late? But I'll get back to Howard because that makes sense. But just so everybody knows, it's not S Corp or C Corp. We do both returns electronically. We roll them both out, not one at a time. The goal for us is to eliminate paper. We want developers to do it. We expect the mandate to be signed. So how I'm approaching software developers is I'm telling them that I would get this product out there if I were you, because in mid-tax season it gets signed. It will probably be retroactive for the tax season based on a specific date that it was signed. So developers, if let's say it gets signed on February 1st, that means anything filed prior to February 1st could have been filed on paper, but anything filed after February 1st would have had to go by the mandate. I don't know if that's how it's going to work. I would think that's what I would push for, and I do have a say in this, although small, I do have a say, and that's what I would push for. But I don't know how that's going to work out. My goal is to get it out there. It looks like many of you can do it already, and I do know that more developers are joining because they know that we intend to put a mandate out there. Howard spoke about something that's unique to New Jersey versus the feds, and it's something that I've got to figure out how to fix. And I'm not quite sure how to do that just yet. New Jersey allows fiscal filers, means that they declare their fiscal year. Now, before I started doing this for a living, I had no idea what that meant. And my brother, by the way, who's got a degree in money, who does what you guys do, plus more, he's got a degree in accounting, he's got a degree in finance, and he's got a degree in economics. And he would talk to me about this stuff, and I'd hear blah, 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 and I would try not to fall asleep. After doing this since 1998, I now understand how interesting this is. I understand that it is far more than numbers that you deal with, and the type of work it takes to understand taxes, and not just taxes, but the economy. With physical filers, the IRS, you guys do their returns. It's yearly. It goes by the calendar year. So they say their system starts in January, and that's when they open it up. So they say you can only do year 13 returns in 13, tax year 13, 2014 rather. So our problem is we got 2013 returns that were due in November. I've got to figure out how to fix that gap. What I'm thinking, and I'm going to talk to the IRS, I've got a proprietary partnership program. The IRS wants me to kill that program and go Fed State Piggyback, which I have not done. I have not done because I can do prior year, present year, and short year returns. And I'm going to tell the IRS they better start thinking about doing short year returns. because that will allow that return to be filed on a prior year form. I've also got to work it out with the taxation auditors. If not, I've got to ask the IRS to allow future year returns to cover the state's ever-changing fiscal years. So it is a hump I have to get over, Howard, and I got to figure it out. I think there's probably I'm probably making a mountain out of a molehill in my own mind. There's probably something reasonable that can be done about this, but it's something I'm going to be looking at very shortly.
It just makes things a little bit difficult.
No, I understand.
The form this year came out a little bit after November 15th.
I was pressing tax for it also. Yeah, I understand. And we've talked to them about producing the form earlier. Yes?
Would it, in the long run, make more sense to make Jersey conform with the other 49 states?
Right.
No, you know,
Use a calendar year.
use a calendar year? I mean,
Yeah.
as far as I know, we're the only state that changes in the middle of the year.
I think we're one of two.
Okay, so,
It's interesting. Let me tell you a little story. As I was doing MEF, and it was a whole coding change and a whole platform change, and it consumed my life about 2-3 years ago, I get an email that says New Jersey's changing its personal income tax reform this year. And I say, okay, what makes this year different than any other year? What lines are you adding? They said, no, you don't understand. We're copying the Fed return. When? They said, oh, this January. I said, you're kidding me. I'm changing a platform and you're doing what? And then they changed their mind. This is our legislature, by the way. They had thought about not building income, AGI, but just allowing you to enter that just like the Fed return, which would make life simpler because we would do what 40 other states do. Oh, let's take the Fed return and put our state name across the top of it. I love that idea. Do you know who has a bit more impact about saying something like that than I do? You. Raise the question. If it's what's comfortable for you. Say we understand that there are issues that need to be tackled. If you did this, obviously I'm going to say it. I have said it. Then the auditors come back at me and say, but we get more money this way. And when you deal with the division, how many of you ever dealt with a division of taxation auditor? Not fun, is it? I have the same problem. I sit in a meeting with them, and it's like taking a 4-inch steak that's been overcooked that you can't cut with a knife. So just trying to cut through the surface of it feels like it's impossible. Now you take something on my personality, I don't give up. I tell them, okay, you might as well bring your lunch with you because we're going to be here for 7 hours. And it still doesn't work. I walk out of the meeting, I get them tired out, I get them to almost concede, then I get an email later saying we don't agree with you. So it's a never-ending evolution. And I will talk about it, but you should talk about it as well. As a committee, as an organization, and bring it to the director. Yes?
Yeah, I was just going to say, maybe Howard can bring that up with Mr. Ryan on January 8th, whenever your meeting is, Howard.
Here's what I noticed. You get those questions from the CPA before the meeting. Thanks for telling me there's one coming up, because that means I'm going to be getting an email shortly. And I get an email from my director with the litany of questions. And it'll highlight the ones that I have to answer. I answer them. And I look at all the questions. Some of them I kind of giggle at because they're obvious answers. Some of them I really have to do some research on to try to figure out what caused the issue. Now, you take someone like Howard. I often think about the position Howard's in, or the people who do this. And they're going to get these hundreds of questions from the listserv. The first thing they have to do is consolidate them. How many people are having like issues? What's the most important issue? What do we really bring up that really needs to be answered? Because when you sit at those meetings, you don't have time to answer every question, do you, Howard?
Almost all.
Almost all, Howard says. But you don't have this kind of time. So what I would pose to you is come up with your questions. Don't make them complaints about, because here's some of the stuff I say. My software says the state caused the problem. I couldn't file the return. The issue you brought up about domestic partners. And I'll respond, software developer issue. Period, end of sentence. I don't get any more detailed than that. because my director can't go to that meeting and explain what I know.
Irwin, John Gens, who's head of the State Tax Committee, and I drafted a bill just to change the inheritance tax to 9 months instead of 8, so that both returns get filed at the same time. It went through committee at legislation, and it was supposed to be voted on, and now they don't think it's important enough, so they just put it on the side. To change the system that we have with the June 30th year-end corporations is a legislative change.
This is.
And I mean, I'm going through something that's revenue neutral because there's no money involved at all. Okay, and you want to, and we want to change the corp to a calendar year. With our legislature, I would say it's almost impossible.
See, that's the one thing I didn't know coming in here when you say can it be changed. If it's a legislative enactment, it's a group of people like you sitting in there, and everybody has an opinion on what should or shouldn't be done and why. And they have an opinion on the importance, like Howard said. Now, if you want something major change like that, as a society, you have to go to your legislators, impose it, and make it important to them. You know, and that's not always the simplest thing to do, as Howard just said. That's a battle I can't help you with. I serve the public, however. Yes, sir.
Talking about simplifying things like that, I don't know if you have any influence on it or not, but is there any real need for New Jersey CPT forms to have separate balance sheets and just, have to reproduce what we have in the federal return? Any way the state can move away from that? And also, is there any way the state can comply with when it's not mandatory to file a balance sheet? So when I have New Jersey CBT, we're not going to do a federal balance sheet. It's all manual to input that balance sheet.
Remember I told you about the 4-inch steak? That's 4-inch steak. That's auditors.
I mean, you've got the federal return. Why do they need to duplicate?
Here's my advice to you. When the question comes, what do you have to bring up at the directors meeting? Make that an issue. Because if you ask Howard to put it out there, Mike Bryan will have to address it.
Well, every time we make something an issue there, they always tell us to do it for our benefit or the taxpayer. I mean, everything.
Write it up and send it to me, and it will be on the agenda.
I mean, I could bring it back. I can send it to Jim, and Jim will say, he'll say to me, wouldn't this be better for the CPA to bring up at the directors meeting? I already know the answer to that. Again, I'm telling you, that's the 4-inch steak. And cutting through that is not going to be simple. Yeah, it's done for the taxpayers' benefit. It's done for everybody's benefit as probably well as the state. I'll probably get slapped for saying this. But if an audit, how many of you have ever had an auditor's role? You must, young lady in the back, young lady over here. When you sit down and audit something and you see a bottom line and you may question the bottom line, what's the first thing you want to see? Detail, right? Detail. I mean, I always find it interesting, and I'm not an auditor, and I got to tell you, I could never be an auditor. But it drives me nuts when I know my systems are going to be audited because I'm pulling up all the detail ahead of time. I will spend a week pulling up volumes of stuff I'll never need to look at again. So when the auditor might ask me for the detail, I've got it. And that's the best answer I can give you. That's what ends up happening. But I'd bring it up as a question. Here's where you know the business better than I do. So anything I would say about that or try to do about that, I would trip over. Howard could present that much better than I can. Yes, sir.
When we file New Jersey payroll taxes, I presume that's under your law.
It's under my purview. Yes, it is.
When we file New Jersey AR, the function of that is under your office too.
Which you say AR is not a function.
Report.
Oh no! I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that real soon. That's the next one I'm tackling. But go ahead, ask your question. Maybe I'll use it as a good transition.
When you go make payments, when you're on New Jersey payroll taxes, they confirm banking information by making you enter it twice. New Jersey AR doesn't.
I'm going to throw the programmer under the bus and tell you, dealing with that individual for that application as I tried to change it because it doesn't fall under my jurisdiction. The first thing that programmer said was, "It's not your app. Why are you trying to change it?" I was like, "Okay." But I got one better. I'm going to tell you what I'm up to in a minute. Young lady in the back, yes. Because you're going to love what I'm going to tell you in a couple seconds. Yes. Yes, I did.
And so we use it all the time, and we had a problem where it was telling us that the annual report, everything was acting fine. And the client went to go get it today, and then they found out that there's some tax return that they couldn't prove or not prove. So they reinstated us, we had to pay a fee, fine, we got the reinstatement, and then all of a sudden they came back with everything said that the annual report was fine, filed, they told us they were, and all of a sudden they came back and said, no, there's 19 years of annual report has been filed.
Do you have something that you can put your fingers on that says that someone said they were filed?
We have a copy of Premier Services that showed that it was filed. I have a whole file.
What you need, then there's a glitch somewhere. Have you ever gone to the Division of Revenue website and you say it says email us?
Well, we've spoken.
Who have you spoken to?
Joe Michelson. I have Monica Mitchell. He's finally started talking to the senator. No one's helping us. They can't prove that something's been done, not been done, and everyone's.
Has money been taken? Has money been taken from a bank account? Remember, annual report has a $50 fee. Has money been taken from a bank account?
At what point in time? We don't. At this point, I can't tell you that.
Well, see, no, you can file an annual report, but if you don't pay the money,
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
we cancel the report.
Yeah, no, I've had-
See, that it's key there. Has the money been paid? Has money been taken out of a bank account? That's the first thing you got to find out. Because if the money has not been taken out of the bank account, I'll let your own constituency answer you here. If you can't prove the money's been paid, have you filed the annual report, even though you filed it? Yeah, but Premier, I only told you start. I'm sorry. I only told you start using Premier Business Services 3 or 4 years ago. I didn't tell you to start using it 19 years ago because it wasn't there. I understand. I understand. And I can't do anything about that. And unless you have, burden of proof falls, unfortunately, on you or your client to present that payment was made. And that's what this is all about. Payment. Was payment made?
I have had it with clients that, let's say their account number was old. You don't get a notification that it didn't go through. But what happens is the next year it'll say you do 2 years instead of 1. That's what happens. But
yes.
They won't come back to you and say there was a rejection or something.
Unfortunately, I understand that. They don't. They put the burden on you. The gentleman saying.
My suggestion is, I know what I do. I pay it through my checking account because I can check it the next day when it goes through, and then I bill the client separately for it. Okay. This way, I know it went through. Okay, and it's not an invasion of privacy, and it's not a disclosure. Okay, but the idea is it goes through my checking account. I know to think that the state was paid, and the gentleman that I speak to down there, when I have a problem, if there's a problem, he will find it and get back to me. Okay, but the idea is I do it through my checking account. That way, I know that the routing number and the checking account number are right. Okay, I can't rely upon. I had a client that closed his bank account the same day I was filing.
I've seen that. I'm gonna tell you something. What Howard just said, I have seen that more times than I can tell you. I'm no longer in charge of the NACHA stream. People familiar with NACHA, National Association of National Association Clearinghouse, National Clearinghouse Association. Sorry, I used to be in charge of that for the state. I just recently relinquished that responsibility. But what Howard's bringing up, I've seen that happen more times than I can tell you. They close their account on the day that the practitioner used the bank account number to go to that. Clients do weird things or intentional things. They think, okay, it's filed, it's done, but the way the annual report works, if that money doesn't show up, now what the state does do, as was pointed out by a couple people, okay, you don't file it, you didn't pay for it last year, you're trying to pay for it this year, you believe you paid for it last year, we're charging you $100. You don't pay the $100, you don't get renewed. Then we revoke. And then you know better than I do what happens after you get revoked. The arduous task of getting reinstated. Yes.
They're saying regular taxation don't talk, their computers don't agree.
It's not taxation.
We got revoked, and now we reinstated it. We're really not reinstated because we're going to get revoked.
My advice to you would be this. I know Monica Mitchell's boss quite well, as a matter of fact. I know Monica Mitchell quite well. I would call her up and say, you need to speak to someone at a higher level because this is not making sense to you. And you request to speak to someone at a higher level than Monica.
Accepting returns that are based on federal 706s from the year 2001. Now that under the sunset of the XP, and we have to change the Windows 7 or otherwise, the software, we can't even keep it, and there's a whole new generation of practitioners coming out that don't even have access to these tools. That this is not embedded in 2013 software of the companies.
Inheritance tax is something I'm not real familiar with, and it's not something I have jurisdiction over. So I really don't want to touch on that question. When you talk about IT and IT programs and software developers, that should all be transparent to you. It should work no matter what. I do know that inheritance tax is putting up a website because prior to giving up my responsibility of the Nazi stream, I had developed something for them where inheritance taxes can be paid online, which off the Division of Taxation website, which has never been done before, and it should be implemented within the next month. That's the only answer I can give you. If you have questions on inheritance tax, I would suggest you raising to Howard and have him raise them to the director, because again, I'd be touching on a subject I'm not real familiar with.
This gentleman mentioned something about payroll taxes. Just a quick question: when payroll taxes, when the quarter changes, your system defaults to the prior quarter as still being the active quarter until the next quarter.
Do you know it's interesting that I have the Division of Taxation at my throat about that? And my dilemma is you're going to understand this. Number one, when you click it, it doesn't default. It stays on the quarter till the quarter ends. Stays on the quarter till the quarter ends.
Of the previous quarter.
Of the same quarter. Stays on the quarter till the quarter ends. Now, if you're paying a weekly payment for the next quarter, but you're still in the prior quarter, that's the dilemma. What that means is the quarter runs October 1 through December 31. Or 30, sorry, thank you. I have to do the calendar thing in my head. December 30. But you're making and that would be for the third quarter, but you want to make a fourth quarter payment, correct? Well, what quarter are you still in? Now, I mention this because I don't disagree with you. The date still falls into the third quarter. I mention this because by a Department of Labor standard, quarter's not changed. The NJ 927 is a combined form between the Department of Labor and Division of Taxation, which was put together at the request of moi, through Governor Whitman. CPA Association wanted one roof to pay everything. Am I incorrect? So that form was done that way. I get the lovely issue of trying to deal with two organizations with two different rules. And the Division of Taxation was at my throat saying, I don't care, it's confusing. So Anthony Johnson put a blurb on the website. When you click it, everybody go out there. You'll see language saying, make sure you pick the right quarter. It says it right there. And Anthony Johnson put it on there. He said, Irwin, please let me put this on there. Don't go to anybody in management asking whether I can or I can't. Just say yes. Has anybody ever met Anthony Johnson? He's 6'3", 270 pounds of solid muscle. I'm not messing with Anthony Johnson. I said yes.
But are you aware that the Fed's 941 deposit, whatever they call it, they leave the board blank, so you have to be proactive to put it in rather than perfunctorily hitting the box.
I wanted to do that, and do you know how many of you would complain that that they put it in the wrong quarter because of me? This becomes, I wanted to do what you wanted to do. I really wanted to do that. I love that idea. Do you know what, if I switch it to the right quarter as based on what tax rule is, and if I got labor to agree with it, the minute someone did that and they were trying to pay the quarter that they were late for, they would blame me. This is a no-win situation, unfortunately. And we discussed this in a round-robin table, and that's when Anthony came with the idea. He goes, let me put text on the screen. So if you go out to the 927 or just the payment screens, you'll see the text I'm talking about. It stands there, it's ugly, it sits out right in front of your face. But you can't make the mistake, and if you make the mistake, shame on you. I want to go back to the AR. Go back to the AR. I have been given a mandate, something I've been chomping at the bit to do for years. Something I've been in my director's ear for, but I'm going to give him the credit for telling me to do it. I have wanted to take the annual report and put it into your software developer packages, so you never again have to go to a website. How many would like that? The goal is to have it there for next year. Would I have it there as a mandate? That's a good question.
Because we know the software.
But the Division of Taxation said they did that for our benefit, breaking it apart. And the client's benefit, it was our benefit.
It's always our benefit.
I'm telling you that when they broke that thing apart and I was coming to these meetings, I'm sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to hide. The darts that got thrown my way when that was broken apart. But it was broken apart for some good reasons. The money wasn't going to the right places. People were being penalized because the money didn't flow correctly. So now it was that all that was corrected, and the money certainly flows correctly. Give me 1 second. But it's not the best way for you to do business. It's better for you to have it at your desktop. The piece I have to tackle is the annual report can be followed with a corporate return or a partnership return. You know, I got to figure out the best way for me to approach this. I'm going to tell you my dilemma, and I'm going to throw somebody under the bus. I have a programmer. Remember when you talked about how come that AR is different than the others? Who does not want to listen to reason, who will not tell me the information I need to develop this application. And it's really, really, really strange where someone at a mid-level to someone who's at a high level is having that type of friction. Any of you know that if you get that within your own office, you fire them. I know that if I get that within my own office, I write them up, I document them, and potentially take some type of action against them. State government has gotten so thin that the fear from her management is that if she decided to quit, that there would be nobody to do the job. So things sometimes take a little longer. I told Jim for Shaune I would get this done by next January. And I'm going to pull my teeth out and anybody else who's to get this done. Now, does that mean your developer is going to do it? I'm going, as soon as I get over the hump of tax season development, I'm sending an email out to them telling them we are doing this. And I'm going to threaten them with the fact that I'm going to request a mandate. Doesn't mean I'm going to get one. Soft hammer is better than no hammer, right? So I'm going to try and put a hammer to it, and I already knew I'd have to. Corp tax was, you know, good guide for that. Yes?
Irwin, that sounds like a great idea, you know, doing the annual report. Can you also do us a favor then? Pull out, can you have them take out that compliance of insurance policy and insurance policy, workman's comp?
Howard, could you just send Howard an email? Howard, send me the email. I'm not familiar with it.
Finish the corporate return. The annual reports now are taking my staff like 2 days to do because you don't have all the, sometimes you don't have that information from the client.
I'm not familiar with that, but if you do me.
Before now, when you go in, they ask you, are you subject to workman's comp?
Right.
So
There is a way about that.
They put that in because companies were not, they would have payroll but no workman's comp, and they used to do a cross check. Now they're just making it easier to do the cross check.
So if you're gonna do that with the corporate taxation, then please eliminate that question, because then we'll never get the returns out.
I'm not familiar enough with it, but you send it to Howard, he will send it to me, and then I can research it and address it.
But Irwin, it's still a separate filing. It's not going back on the CBT, right?
I don't know I honestly don't know the answer to that.
No, the annual report, it used to be on the CBT.
Oh, no,
That'd be a separate filing.
I apologize. It's a separate filing.
Is that Jose? They're not gonna, right, it's not gonna hold up your corporate tax return.
Oh, no, if that's your question, I apologize. No,
I think
no,
that's what he was saying.
no, you're
My
set.
concern is if you have to file, if you're gonna file through the software.
It's a separate filing. It's a separate filing, a separate payment.
It's not gonna be a tax.
No, I apologize if that's the idea I give you. No, it's going to remain a separate filing, and its payment will be separate. So if you're doing your CBT return or your partnership return, you will file the partnership return. You will make a partnership payment. You will file your annual report. You will make an annual report payment.
Right.
Same with the corp. You'll file the corp, make the corp payment, file the annual, make the annual payment. It's all separate. It goes to, once I get it, goes to separate data streams.
Basically, what we've just told you is, we not only have to deal with revenue and Treasury and Secretary of State, you now have, and Department of Labor, you now have to deal with Department of Insurance, because that's
Workers' comp, actually workers' comp.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. When you talk about the annual report, that's really revenue. It's not Department of State. It became a part of revenue in 1998 when, under the Governor Whitman initiative to consolidate everything and create one way of doing business, not create multiple registration pools. The Department of Labor still manages their stuff. The Division of Taxation still manages their stuff, but we collect it all. I collect the WR30. I collect the 927. So we collect the insurance information that goes on the 927, and it goes to multiple places. A lot of the agencies want a separate answer simply because because their regs or rules are different. So I get it, but I'm trying to create pockets of information for shared information. So as we begin to introduce new applications, we can identify ways that we could potentially make it easier for the practitioner, and that does go on. I can't make guarantees I can do it, but I certainly look at it, and I certainly see it, and so we certainly talk about it. There's a gentleman in this area who had his hand up and I missed him. Do you still have a question?
That was my question.
Okay.
Are you still gonna have the annual reports due on the month of when?
I am going to change nothing. The annual report could be due at a different time than the corporate return. I cannot change that. If I look to align them up, it's a mess.
It's based upon when the corporation was incorporated. That's what it is.
Whatever the rule is, I can't change it. I already looked at it. It's too much. I will do more damage by changing that than I'll fix. Yes. Eric, can you keep it down for a second? I need to hear that.
Last year we did homestead forms for some of our clients online, and when we did that, it asked for the email address. This year we got letters saying, last year you filed by email, so you prepare your return online. Here's a code number, and we were like, wait a minute. We kept calling and saying, we have no idea. I'm the accountant. I file 50 of these. I have no idea which client you're for. We can't help you. We can't give you a list. So they were asking for our emails, and then we got a mass email that, telling us that, okay, you filed last year by online, so you can file online. They didn't get paper.
That's a perfect question for Howard for the meeting, the director's meeting. That's a perfect question.
What was the question?
That homestead rebates. That last year they were filed on the web. She went in for her clients, filed them on the web. She gets a letter this year that says use the web again, but she has no idea who they're talking.
But it was an email.
Yeah, it's an email. She has no idea how to address it.
We called, and they said, we can't help you.
I would put that in email to Howard. He's not going to remember all that. You're going to need to. I would send that through the CPA listserv and request that be introduced at the director's meeting. But that's a perfect question for Mike Bryan. I can't even begin to address that.
I'm glad they took it off to 1040, so we don't have the responsibility of the client's headache. It's one less that we need to worry about.
I've really gone through the material I wanted to cover today. Jim has some other stuff in here that I'm not going to cover simply because I am not as familiar with it. They deal with the business registries and all that, and it's not really what I do. I could tell you what's up with it. If you had questions, I couldn't answer it. I don't think there are any major changes to it, other than the one I told you about the annual report. I'm here to answer any questions you've got, so before I allow Howard to take the stand, does anybody else have anything else they want to ask me about anything I've discussed?
You want to cover that privacy?
Howard wants to cover this privacy form that I've never even looked at yet.
It's private.
It's private.
I'll cover it.
I'm going to let Howard cover it
Just
because
leave it, because that's the only copy I have right now.
I am not familiar with this. It's not been put for me yet. So anything I could say on this, Howard, wouldn't be helpful, but I can send questions back. Everybody, as always, you've been an excellent audience. Thank you very much.
Hey, Howard, you want me to introduce you? You can take care of yourself, right?
Should I introduce myself?
No, Howard, you too. I'm not going to stay here for the whole
Oh,
presentation.
wait, thank you.
Thank you. I'm stay here for a few minutes of privacy forms and I'll learn something about
Okay,
myself.
I'll let you know. Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to go over some administrative things that many of us don't do. I'm going to mention this. I did it because I did it last Friday at the Coach House. How many people have a client sign a 7216 permission letter for your files? Only those that I've yelled at before, right? Okay. Under the regulations, 1.301.7216, 301.7216 or 6713, which is the civil section. You need to get from your client, before preparing a return, let her, and there are hundreds of samples on the web, both at the AICPA and the state, where the client gives you permission to talk to a third party or do anything with a third party, and also to prepare the return with the information that they submit to you that is personal in nature. And the state of New Jersey, we're going down to a meeting on January 8th, and I received last night the state tax uniform procedure law makes it unlawful and a crime for any employee or former employee of the Department of Treasury to disclose or use the personal advantage, any information obtained from the Division of Taxation Records, and so on. Okay? And it is a violation of New Jersey law and is punishable by a prison term. Okay? Accessing any information by computer or otherwise for any reason other than a reason necessitated by an employee's official duties is a disorderly person's offense. And this is the state of New Jersey. We're going to be visiting the Division of Revenue, and before we can even walk into the Division of Revenue building, we on the committee have to sign this form that came out yesterday. The electronic filing of a tax return contains many caveats. Now, all the forms that Shaune showed you this morning, if you noticed on the bottom, they all say under penalties of perjury. Okay? The government is shorthanded. The government doesn't have the funds from Congress. Okay, and when I say government, I'm talking IRS. The state of New Jersey is shorthanded. They've hired some new auditors, but they're shorthanded. The federal government is shorthanded. They are looking for third-party information. The third-party information comes by way of 1099s. Now, number one, I will tell you the 1099-K The 1099-K, you don't complete it, it's completed by the credit card companies. But what you have to do is ask your clients new questions. If your client receives funds through credit card transmittals, and the amount of credit card transmittals that he's informed about is over 80% of the total receipts that are being shown on line 1, you will get a phishing questionnaire from the IRS saying, we'll give you a chance to amend your return if you made a mistake and left off some receipts, because the credit cards equate to 80%, more than 80% of your total receipts. Therefore, there's something maybe missing. So we're giving you a chance to amend the returns. There is a U.S. senator that has proposed a bill and asked the IRS to stop the phishing expedition, but that bill has gone nowhere. So that's what the 1099-K is. It's out there, and you have to just ask your client if he's reporting all his receipts. You don't have to go any further than that.
Is this everyone more than 80%, or is it just?
No, they have a process. They take the 1099-K information that the IRS receives. They look at your total receipts for the corporation, and if the credit card number is 110% of what you reported, you're going to get an auditor who's going to come and visit. Okay, if it's within some proximity, okay, they're going to ask you if you want to amend, or they're going to ask you to please give an explanation as to why it happened. I happen to have it on one client, and what happened is he does every job, he does roofs, and every time he does a job, it's $8,000. Well, people don't have that money in their checking account anymore. Where can you buy time using the credit card? So his credit card receipts went up and the checks deposited went down. Okay? And they sent him a letter, and then they sent him a letter, we need another 45 days to play with it. Yes?
I heard supposedly that they're looking at the business code, the type of business it is, and they have different standards for different kinds of businesses. That's what I heard.
Yes, they follow the SIC code.
But,
There's no question about that.
Yeah, for internet businesses, it's virtually 100%. I worry about that.
But I had one person that came in and told me that what happened is they got they actually had an audit, okay, because the receipts for the credit card was in excess of what was shown on line 1 of the 1120. Okay. Now, talking about, Shaune was referring this morning, telling you that they're looking for more data. As you can see, there's more international forms. Well, I got news for you. There are more forms this year. The 1125E goes with 1120, 1120S, 1120 REIT. And what happens is you put down the name of the officer, the social security number, percentage of time devoted to the business, and how many, what's their percentage of stock ownership, and their compensation. This is a new form that came out from OMB December 2013. Another new form is Schedule B1, which is information on partners owning 50% or more of the partnership. They want the name of the entity, the employer identification number, the type of entity, the country of origination, and the maximum owned profit loss capital percentages. Okay? So what I'm saying to you is there is more emphasis now on more detail in the tax returns that you're filing. The other thing I want to reiterate, there's 2 questions on every form dealing with 1099s. I will tell you, as I've told every audience that I've spoken to, you do not answer the question. You ask the client to answer the question by either sending them a copy of page 1 and say, please answer these questions and initial. so that you are not making that decision. It is not yours to make. Okay, you must be very careful. The next thing, if they are issuing 1099s, make sure that that 1099 total is someplace on the 1120, 1065, or whatever form it is, okay? Because we had an instance where the amount reported did not agree with the 1099s, and what happens is you're aiding and abetting the non-reporting of income, because those persons weren't sent 1099s for the total amount that they had actually been paid, okay? Aiding and abetting is a violation of the law, in case you didn't know that. All right, 8879. The federal requires it. The state does not require it. Bookbinder requires it. Okay, it's a strange rule. Okay? Now, why do I say I want that? As you heard from Jim, from Irwin, sometimes we don't file the state return at the same time electronically, or whatever the situation may be. Therefore, I still want to get permission. If I'm going to file it electronically, I want to get permission from the client and have that in my file, that they're okaying my filing of the state tax return. I'm looking for protection of you, me, okay, the practitioner. Because as I tell everybody, we have no protection. I want to make sure that you are protected. So I like a signed 8879, New Jersey, and a federal. Number two, how many people have a receipt or something signed by the client saying, I received a copy of my return, I received all my garbage, and I can substantiate the numbers that were used to complete my tax return? You have yelled at enough, you finally did. Okay.
How many clients understand what's on their tax?
Excuse me?
How many clients really understand what's on their tax return?
It's not my problem that they understand it. Their lawyer will understand it 3 years from now. Okay? I'm not interested whether my client understands it. I'm looking for me, you. Okay? That's who I'm looking for. My package contains the 28879s, an engagement letter, the 7216 letter, and the letter from the client saying, I got all my garbage back. Because on the ethical side, under Circular 230 or the state ethics, you have to know, and at least if the client comes and says, he didn't return my papers, you signed a receipt, you received your papers. Okay? And I have that in my file.
I keep all my clients' papers because if and when they're
You got a big office?
I have a big
Yes,
file.
I'm fine.
Oh, okay.
But if and when they're audited and then they need to find this stuff, I find that it's more difficult for them to find it than for me to have it.
Well, how much are you paying per foot?
It's in my garage.
It's in your garage. Good. Put your car in there, take the paperwork out. It's not your responsibility. It's you send the paperwork back to the client. I instruct my clients, when I send you your copy of your returns and your garbage, you put it into an envelope, put 2013 or 2012 on it, and you store it. It's not your responsibility to store it for a client. You want to scan it? That's fine. A paperless, you got a paperless office. Many people have a paperless office. You do it that way. No problem. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate. The 7216 letter has to be signed by the client before the preparation of the tax return. That is the law. That is the law. Okay. How many people have a quality control document? Oh, no hands. One. Okay. If you are a sole practitioner or a partnership, it does not matter. You should have a quality control document. There is a publication from the Internal Revenue Service dealing with quality control, and it says in it that individual practitioners, sole practitioners, are required to have a document that states how they process a tax return and what procedures they follow to make sure that the tax return is accurate and filed by the practitioner. As you can see, I have a lot of documentation. All of this is available to you on the web. We have a very nice web system that works, and it has a lot of paperwork. The other thing is, just for your edification, right now there are 11.3 million collection cases at the IRS.
Wow.
So there's plenty of work out there right now. But the IRS is behind, okay? And also, I will tell you that most of the OIC mills, Lovely Woman of the Year and J.K. Harris and so on, are out of business. But there's new ones that always pop up because everybody's going to help everybody, but they're frauds, okay? And they just waiting for the Attorney General to come in and close them up. Also, I would suggest engagement letters. How many people have engagement letters? Oh, good. Well, I see a couple of hands didn't go up. I guess they got arthritis. But seriously, I can't tell you how important engagement letters are, but if you check your insurance carrier and anything else on the web, they're going to tell you, get one. Now, I'm going to tell you there are separate engagement letters in the tax arena. I'll put it that way. Number one, the engagement letter to prepare the tax return. Number two, if they receive a CP 2000 notice, that is a separate engagement. Number one, it will put money in your pocket and avoid arguments with a client. The third engagement letter is if they get a full-blown examination. Because I just finished a CP 2000. It took me 3 days to get the information together and get it finished. I presented the client with a bill. But I had him, before I started, when I got my separate power of attorney signed by husband and signed by wife, I had an engagement letter signed jointly saying that I was handling the CP 2000 with the feds and the state, because you must sometimes amend the state, and there will be a separate billing for that. The client signed it. When push came to shove, the government was looking for $406,000. The government got $840. So I think I did a pretty good job. And then I said, well, let's see, if I charge them $40,000, 10%. No, we can't do that. But the idea was I corrected it. And then the first question out of the client's mouth, isn't that covered with the preparation of the return? I said, no, separate engagement letter. It's a separate deal, and I have a different fee arrangement in the letter. You signed it, you pay it, and no argument. It was done. I don't know what's going on. Okay. These new computers. Okay. The two booklets that are on the website for this meeting, the 1345 is a new booklet, and it tells you what your requirements are, and I will just go over a few of them. It's 62 pages, and it's for all e-filers. It talks about you're an ERO, and it tells you you must always enter the paid preparer's identifying information, name, address, EIN, and PTIN. How many people have not renewed their PTINs yet? What are you waiting for? Christmas? It's coming next week. Huh? It's due by December 31st. They want that $63 is going to balance the budget. All right. Somebody put a question out about 2 months ago. And he said, I have all my clients' refund checks put into my checking account.
Because he pays their annual reports.
It is a direct violation of Circular 230 to have a client's refund check deposited any place with your fingerprints. You are not to touch a client's refund check. The state of Connecticut, I got a call yesterday, instead of refunds, they're sending out debit cards. Okay? And the person called up and says, what do I do with a debit card? I never used one. Okay? Well, the government doesn't tell you. They just said, here's the card, because they figure, number one, you will lose it, not use it, and they will keep the money in the treasury. Or else they go to Target, and all I can tell you is I received a letter from Horizon Blue Cross.
You too.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
All right? Somebody stole a laptop. Is this new? Nobody's ever heard of a stolen laptop. What are you doing with a laptop in Horizon Blue Cross? Can't you afford a desktop? Okay, but they stole the laptop and they got a security violation. All right? And then yesterday, Target hit the news. Okay, and they said, if you bought anything, who didn't buy anything during that sale period, okay, when the red flag was out and you use your red card? Well, you don't buy anything anyway, you're cheap. Okay, but the idea is, hey, you know how far? All right, if you did it by internet, they said you weren't included. How do they know that? Okay, just because it didn't go through the swipe machine or whatever. And the funny thing is, I just took out a Target card last week because I went in I had to buy something and I got 5% off. Okay, but mine wasn't involved because the card wasn't issued by the 15th. So the system, as Irwin was telling you, it's not infallible. Okay, and with all this information out there, the privacy of your client, I will tell you, at the IRS is number one. It is number one. The State Department of Labor has a separate division working on identity theft at this time. The State Division of Taxation has pulled a staff together for identity theft. The federal government has put in steps at the IRS for closer scrutiny. But Mr. Snowden has voided all of the information, and everything that's coming out now with NSA, I have no information that I can give you. All I can tell you is anything you want to know about yourself and where you were in the last 10 days is on the web. Okay? I hate to make fun of it, but it's terrible. Now, the 8879. Somebody said, well, do I have to sign it? The answer is no. It has your electronic signature on it. Okay? We, as EROs, have an electronic signature, otherwise you couldn't print it out.
I think that's if you're a sole proprietor, if you're single out, if you're a partnership, you can get to sign it.
If partnership, you have to assign a preparer.
Right.
Every return must have an assigned preparer. The 8879, I'm going to tell you. Number one, you make sure it is signed by the client. It could be faxed, it could be a rubber stamp, it doesn't matter, but it has to be signed. The IRS is sending around people to investigate, and I'm going to go through this rule very carefully. You are not supposed to have on your desk more than one tax return that you are currently working on. Everything else is to be in a locked file. I know that sole practitioners, let's be normal, let's have reason. You do not want to walk into my office or anybody else's sole practitioner's office and tell me that I only have one tax return sitting on the desk. It's impractical. But I'm telling you that that's what the rule is, because if your postman walks in or your UPS driver and they come over to your desk and they can see whose return you're working on, you're in violation of 7216 and 6713. They come into the office, you got to close the file. You can't even have it on the computer screen. You got to blank it out. Okay? This is what the IRS is looking at. This is what they're doing very carefully. Identity theft, they're going to stop it. Never. Because it's almost physically impossible, as you can see. The sophistication of the thieves, I'll use that term, the sophistication is far outpaced of the systems that we have in place right now in the United States. And I believe that everybody that uses a computer knows this. Has anybody been held for ransom? Okay, what, did they want 300 or 200?
3. No, they want much more.
Huh?
Much more than that.
Okay? It is ludicrous. You do not open any emails during tax season unless you know who's sending it. And if there's a click in there someplace, if you don't need the information, just delete the file and say, please send it to me in paper. Okay? It is terrible. That's why this book was written. Okay? This tells you what you must do. But you have to protect yourself with the 7216 and disclosure. You cannot have, if you have a client coming in, there should be nothing on your desk but that client's file. I know it's hard. And you're going to tell, well, I'm a sole practitioner and this guy's supposed to call me back with his interest and his real estate taxes and so on and so forth. Put the file away someplace. See if you can get a desk with a locked drawer, put it in there if you're waiting for a client to call you back. We all have this situation, but I'm telling you how the IRS is looking at it. And it's in the rule book. And this is there are 2 publications. We put them both on the web. This one is called Safeguarding Taxpayer Data. And then we have the other one. So they're all on the web. They're on our website for today. Okay? And you can see the ERO must always enter the paid preparer's identification number. Always. Okay? It doesn't say sometimes. The ERO must be diligent in recognizing fraud and abuse and report it to the IRS where possible. If you make a mistake on a Social Security number, the IRS electronic filing system will recognize it and should be able to split it. How many people used Form 8888 last year? That's where you split the refund. Okay? I received 2 phone calls, and they ended up, they did it wrong anyway. So I don't know if I would follow it at all using that form. The IRS now accepts debit cards in addition to credit cards. They also take trust fund recovery. And your clients should sign up for EFTPS. I will tell you that we do not receive, or we right now do not have the ability to get a client's estimated tax payments like we can for the state, which that took, I will tell you, that took the committee many years to finally get that. Okay, and it's great because the client says, oh yeah, I made all 4 payments, and then they get that little yellow form that says, no, you only made 3. Or what happened to me this year, I have a client with a fiscal year end. They put because of the way the client paid the estimates, they paid 2 in January, 1 for the extension and 1 for the next year, and they put them in the wrong quarter. And I had to call the state, and they were very nice. The hotline, by the way, the state hotline is fantastic. The other one, the IRS. We did a survey at the national level, and the average wait was 1 hour 15 minutes. Okay, now if you look at the, they did send around, they did give us a printout showing where the National Association of somebody did a survey, and they did actual phone calls. It said 7:30 in the morning. They got on in 15 minutes. Okay, and one said 8 p.m. They got on in 15 minutes. But during the day, it was anywhere over an hour. They are shorthanded. And because of the amount of notices that are going out, okay, they can't hire enough people. They did hire a group. They're still in training. Okay, sometimes you just have to wait because if people receive notices, they're on the phone for a long time. And when they took out from the e-services the power of attorney and the getting of the transcripts, they just burden the taxpayer hotline. I'm not making an excuse for these people, but the IRS's hands are tied by, they're tied by Congress, okay? And we all know about Congress, and I won't go down that avenue.
Howard,
Yes.
on the screen there,
Yeah.
third line, third thing down, it says taxpayers can make up to 4 estimated payments from filing 1040 series return electronically.
Mm-hmm. I make my 4 payments. EFTPS, the dates are set.
I think that was something else.
Okay. That's the only way you're going to know what a client has paid in federal estimated tax without going through a bunch of imaginations, because the client gets a receipt. Okay, and it also goes through their checkbook.
Howard, they said this year, we can't do it as CPAs, but the client, I think starting in January 1st, 2014, can actually go on and check to see if they made the estimated payments. There's somewhere like through the state that we have, we can do the CPAs. They said the client can actually go on, there's an IRS website that they can go on and find out the 4 payments. Payments that they made.
Unfortunately, many of my clients are not computer literate.
Yeah, I know. No, I know.
Okay, so I would not. I'll suggest it to them. There's nothing wrong with that. Yes.
Unless it's changed when you do the electronic payments when you file the return for IRS, they don't allow you to change it.
Yes,
So
you can.
this is the clients.
Right. You can't change them.
You can.
Yeah, you have to give them, I think it's like 48-hour notice, is it 800? There's a toll-free number.
Oh, it's a phone number, it's not online though.
Well, I don't believe so, because I had a client who
No.
closed out their account.
TPS system, I've been on the-
EFTPS, once it goes in, it goes in. Okay. The changes are very hard. But if you call, there's an 800 number, you call the number. I find that the helplines, like on the P10, all right, the helplines have been very, very helpful. It's the hotline that we have the biggest weight. Okay, and that one, believe me, I have tried. Okay, if you'll notice down there, it says EROs may sign 8879 by rubber stamp, mechanical device, or computer software program in, as described in the notice 2007-79. The 8453 is alive and well. This year, the Schedule D is a little bit easier than last year, from what I could see, but Jim and I were on the way down and we were discussing the new form 8960 and 8959, right?
59 is the Medicare tax.
Yeah, that's the Medicare tax. So if you have clients with W-2s over $200,000, you have to go searching for the Medicare tax because that's a withholding tax and they can get that refunded.
Yeah.
All right, so you got to be careful when you're doing your reconciliations if the person is making more than $200,000 in W-2 income.
And what I told you out on the way down too, the federal withholding tax, you know, it says on the tax return, includes the 0.9. So now you can't add up your W-2s, your withholding tax. It's not going to agree with that box because the 0.9% is in there.
Yeah, so you've got to be
So if you're trying
careful
to
on the
reconcile your
reconciliation.
W-2s to the 1040, the 0.9's in there. It's not going to tell you out because that 8959 does the reconciliation for that, and that's the number that goes on as federal withholding tax. It's a weird calculation. Go through the form.
So, by the way, I left out on the desk, unfortunately, I only made 40 copies, hopefully it was enough, showing what the average 1040 fee is. Okay, and the average means Podunk, North Nebraska, and New Jersey, okay, and they divide that by 2, that's average. But I think if you look at it, you take a 1040, a Schedule A B, a C, and a D, okay, and you throw an E in there, you're looking at $800 as a minimum tax, because, and that number is derived by the IRS based upon the length of time it takes to gather the information and prepare the return. Now, we all know that when they used to send out the booklet, they said it takes 231 hours or it was some fantastic number. And we said, yeah, we put it at our billing rate, we'll never have a client. So I would take that with a grain of salt. Okay? My suggestion also is that you monitor irs.gov Tax Pros section, okay, at least once a week. I suggest you also go on the New Jersey website and look at the news section for tax practitioners, because as the changes come out, that's where they'll be posted. Now, you have to understand, we did not have any tax law, so we don't have a book to buy from CCH this year. But there were little laws that were passed. There were things that were changed. Okay? Don't assume anything when preparing a tax return. Okay? It's very bad to assume. I will not go into the definition. Okay? But I'm telling you to be very careful, because there were little changes in the law. There's something to do with debt forgiveness on the mortgages on homes that are short sale, I think. Okay? There's something to do with that. Shaune told you that there's a lot to do in the FATCA area. How many people have registered with FinCEN to file the 114A? Ladies and gentlemen, you know, we are the leading practitioners because you come to these meetings to be informed. Okay? I'm suggesting you do that. Yes, Jim?
If you use Thompson Reuters, you don't have to. It's included in the software.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that.
I hadn't heard it either.
And they say that it's done for other manufacturers, but nobody's done.
Okay, but I want this committee to be alerted to it, okay, because it is there, okay? Again, take a look at these publications, 4557 and 1345, okay? Because they give you the guidelines. If you need information on 7216, you can go on the AICPA website or the IRS website, and they've got sample letters that you can use. If you do financial planning, there's a separate letter. If you sell insurance products, there's a separate letter. If you sell stocks, they have a separate letter for that under 7216. I'm just going to reiterate again. It's before you file a return. So when you're sending out your organizers, and I hope that everybody's using an organizer, your engagement letter should be there, and the 7216 letter should be there so that you get it back and you have permission to prepare the client's tax return and use their personal information. I really feel that you have to be forewarned and forewarned in these areas because the sensitivity right now of client identity and client data, I can't tell you how sensitive every organization is. So I want you to protect yourself and have these papers in your file. Have a good tax season. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. I'd just like to thank all the speakers today, Howard, Shaune, Jonathan, Irwin, who left. Next month is in Iselin at the EisnerAmper, I'm not sure which one it is, building. And that's on January 20th, and we're going to be doing the foreign stuff like we said. All right, have a good holidays, everybody. Drive safe. Take care.